The $7 Ranch. The spring wind whistled across the rolling plains of Wyoming, carrying with it dust, the scent of sagebrush, and the faint echo of men's laughter from town. Luke Harper leaned against the wooden post outside the Cheyenne courthouse, his hat tipped low over his brow. The town was busy, but not busy with work, busy with spectacle. $7, the auctioneer barked, his voice cracking in the afternoon sun. Who'll give me $7 for this God-forsaken piece of land? An abandoned ranch outside of town, 30 acres of dirt and broken fences. Once belonged to the Miller family, long since gone. $7. Who'll take it? The crowd chuckled. It wasn't much of an offer. $7 could buy a man a saddle, a small mule, or a month's worth of bacon and flour. But a ranch? Everyone knew it wasn't worth the sweat it would take to rebuild it. Everyone except Luke. He stepped forward, his boots crunching against the dirt. His voice was calm, low, steady. "I'll take it." The auctioneer blinked. "You'll take it?" "For $7. Luke dug into his pocket, pulled out the exact bills, creased, worn, and precious. It was near all the money he had left after months of drifting from job to job. But he had no wife, no family, and no roots. He was tired of sleeping under borrowed roofs and riding endless miles with nothing to call his own. The gavel struck. Sold. The Harper boy owns himself a ranch. The crowd roared with laughter, some slapping their knees, others shaking their heads. "A ranch for the price of a Sunday roast," one man shouted. "Harper, you're a fool," another added. "That land will break you before you break it." Luke ignored them. He tucked the deed into his vest, mounted his horse, and rode out of town. The ranch stood lonely against the horizon. The main house, once painted white, had turned gray with rot and wind. Fences sagged. The barn leaned sideways, as though drunk and ready to fall. The well had a rusted pump that creaked with every breath of wind. Luke dismounted and let his hand rest against the railing. It was rough, splintered. The whole place felt like it was waiting to collapse. Yet, it was his. He spent the first few days clearing brush, patching holes, and gathering firewood. The nights were cold, and he slept under a roof that leaked rainwater in streaks. But he was alive, working with his own hands, and for the first time in years, hope swelled inside him. On the fourth night, a sound woke him. A creak. Then another. The sound of a door inside the house. Luke reached for his revolver, his instincts sharp. He rose from his bedroll and moved silently through the shadows. The floor groaned beneath his boots. He pushed open the door to what once had been the Miller family's parlor, and froze. In the corner, by the faint glow of dying embers, stood a woman. Her hair was long, black as a raven's wing, tied back in a braid. Her face was pale, eyes almond-shaped, wide with fear. She held a small boy close to her chest, his face buried in her dress. Luke lowered his gun slowly. "Who are you?" The woman's lips trembled. Her English was broken, hesitant. No, shoot. We stay only. Please. No trouble." Luke frowned, his mind racing. She was Chinese. That much was clear. He had seen a few Chinese workers before, railroad men, laborers in the mines. But never a woman, never a child. And never squatting in a ranch house thought abandoned. "You live here?" Luke asked quietly. She nodded, clutching the boy tighter. "No place else. We hide. No one know." Luke let out a slow breath. $7 had not just bought him land. It had bought him a secret. Her name, he learned the next day, was Mei Lin. She spoke in fragments, her English limited but clear enough for survival. The boy was Han, 6 years old, with sharp black eyes that never stopped watching Luke. They had come west years ago, Mei said, when her husband worked on the railroads. but he had died in an accident, crushed by timber. The company offered nothing. With no family, no money, and no welcome in town, she had wandered until she found this abandoned ranch. "We stay here. Quiet. Nobody want us. We not hurt anyone." Luke studied her, the weight of her story heavy in his chest. She had been living here in silence, scavenging food from the wild, keeping to the shadows, raising her boy in secrecy. The land he thought was his alone had never truly been empty. The unwanted becomes home. Luke had two choices: drive them off or let them stay. The law said the ranch belonged to him now, deed and all. But the sight of May standing barefoot in the dirt, her son clinging to her skirts, made his decision for him. "You don't have to hide any more," he said, his voice low. "You can stay. But things'll be different. We work this land together." May's dark eyes searched his, mistrust sharp in her gaze. She had lived too long under suspicion and scorned to believe in kindness easily. Still, she nodded. Life on the ranch was not easy, but it began to change. Luke taught Han to hammer nails, to carry wood, to mend a fence. The boy followed him like a shadow, curious, cautious, but slowly warming. At night, May cooked rice and wild herbs over the fire, sometimes trading her meals with Luke's beans and salted pork. The three of them, strangers bound by necessity, began to feel like something else. But the world beyond the ranch was not blind. One afternoon, while Luke rode into Cheyenne for supplies, the whispers began. A ranch hand named Blake saw May and Han by the well. His laughter carried through town. "Harper's shacked up with a China woman. Got himself a heathen wife and a brat too." The mockery spread like wildfire. Chinese immigrants were already despised, blamed for stealing jobs and undercutting wages. For Luke to live openly with one, on a ranch that everyone thought a joke, made him an easy target. When Luke returned, men confronted him outside the saloon. "You best send that woman packin'," Blake sneered. "Ain't no place for her here. Folks don't want your ranch turnin' into a Chinatown." Luke's hand hovered near his gun. His jaw clenched. "She stays." A hush fell. The men weren't used to hearing that kind of defiance. Blake spat into the dust. "Then you'll regret it." That night, Luke found May standing by the porch, her arms wrapped around herself. "You fight for us?" she asked softly. He nodded. "This is your home as much as mine now. No man can take that away." Her eyes glistened in the starlight. She said nothing more, but something shifted between them. Weeks turned to months. Together, they rebuilt. Fences stood tall again. Chickens scratched in the yard. The barn no longer leaned. And laughter, something the ranch hadn't known in years, returned with Han's voice. But the trouble did not end. One evening, flames lit the horizon. Smoke rose from the barn. Luke ran, shouting for water. May and Han carried buckets beside him, their faces streaked with soot. Together they fought, until the fire was beaten back. When dawn broke, Luke found tracks leading away from the ranch. Horse prints. Boot marks. Blake's doing. The ranch had survived, but barely. Luke stood by the ashes, weary but unbroken. May stepped close, placing a trembling hand on his arm. For the first time, she spoke without hesitation. "You buy ranch for $7, she whispered. "But you also buy us. We family now." Her words struck deeper than any bullet. Luke looked at her, at Han, at the land scarred but alive. For $7, he had thought he bought failure. Instead, he had found a home, a purpose, and a family no one could take away. And as the sun rose over the plains, he knew the fight for this ranch had only just begun, but he would face it with them, side by side.